Well, the NBA has lost a true Hall of Famer. Yesterday, Earl Lloyd died. He was the first African-American to play in an NBA game. He died at the age of 86. In 1950, he became the very first African-American to play in an NBA game, but his accomplishments didn't stop there. He later became the first African-American to win an NBA championship and the first African-American to be named an NBA assistant coach. Lloyd was inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame in 2003. Today, we remember Lloyd. Coach, I'll start with you first. What does his legacy mean to you?
Well, obviously, he broke the color barrier in basketball. And see, I sit in a unique seat in this sense. I was born in '54. And so as you grow up, and you're a young kid, you watch sports, obviously. My father was in the military. And as you're watching television, all of a sudden you see some black faces. And the question I used to ask my dad, I said, Dad, who is this guy? You know, because they look different. Okay, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Especially when you're 6, 7 years old and you're starting to watch sports and watch teams and guys play, you go, there's a black guy playing, you know, and it's kind of, oh, okay, who is he? And so you kind of learn the history of this and the guys that break the barrier. We talk about Jackie Robinson. He was a part of basketball history. And I think going forward, you appreciate it when you become an athlete. Because even in the 60s and in the 70s, in the early 70s and in the mid 70s, there was still some rough edges that needed to be smoothed out. And I realized when I went through situations where it was uncomfortable, I could have lashed out, and I went, nope, because I got to do it right. Because for the next generation that follows me, I want to make it better. My father always told me that you always want to make it better for the people that come behind you. You know, what have you done to improve it? I'm going to tell you, to be quite honest, and I'm glad this came up. I watched Tony Dungy as a black head coach, how he handled himself. And between us, I watched it and I went, wow, there's more pressure on that guy than I really realized. And then I realized it even more when I became the first black head coach of the New York Jets in New York. And I said, look, I don't know how this is going to turn out. You know, and I'm hoping that we win a Super Bowl, and I'm going to do everything I can to put my heart and soul in this. And I did. I gave him everything I could give him. But I said, at the end of it, I want to make sure that when I sat in this seat, I wasn't no longer looked at as a black coach. It was just, he's a football coach.
Right.
He's a football coach. And he did whatever he had to do to try to help this team win. And I made it better for the next generation of coaches that follow along. Now, Todd Bowles sits in that seat.
Wow.
And so you know, when you look at history as a black former athlete and as a coach, you always look at that going, look, just whatever you do, make sure you do it right. The wins and losses will take care of themselves, but make sure you conduct yourself as a person that sat in that seat that said, you know what, he did it the right way, he handled it with class, and he should be in that seat because he worked for it and he deserves the opportunity to have that seat.
Well said, Coach.
We're roughly the same age.
Yeah.
Did you love the NBA as a kid? Because there wasn't that much early on to love,
the
right?
Celtics, you know, I got a lot of Celtic games because I was on the West Coast.
Good.
You saw the Celtics, you knew who you saw. You saw the Lakers.
Of course.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you saw some black players and you went, okay? I mean, and then, you know, you just kind of remember the guys, you know, and as you grow up, you kind of, and then all of a sudden you saw the big afros coming into the National Basketball Association, you know, so it was fun watching it, but at first, you're right. I mean, baseball was the same thing. I mean, I grew up in a great era because there was a lot of groundbreaking going on. Not only for players, but all of a sudden, you saw a black coach and you went, woo, we got a black coach. I can remember coming in the NFL. A black coordinator? Really?
Wow.
What? No. Maybe a position coach.
Right.
Every team maybe had one black position coach. I'm talking 1977. It's interesting.
I did not know Mr. Earl Lloyd. I followed him from a distance, but he was a quiet trailblazer. 3 years after Jackie Robinson had broken the color barrier in baseball, only 3 years later, he's breaking it in basketball. Now, the NBA was fledgling at that point. It wasn't remotely what we know today because Mr. Lloyd started on a team called the Washington Capitals.
That's right.
That folded before the year was over. Right. This was the early NBA. And he opened in his first game at the Rochester Royals, who were a member of the Western Conference that included the Fort Wayne Pistons and the Indianapolis Olympians, and a team called Tri-Cities that represented Rock Island and Moline, Illinois, and Davenport, Iowa. That's an NBA team. So it was a little bit minor league. But I've read a lot about Mr. Lloyd, and he heard the N-word many times. He was insulted many times. And he always came across to me as a deeply spiritual man who had a serenity about him that I never quite got from Jackie Robinson, who was an emotional ball of fire and just you know, he just had to contain himself and contain. And Mr. Rickey said, I picked you because you won't respond. I know you won't respond. And we've seen the movie. And this man did it with serenity, with a very quiet, calm, a Coach Dungy sort of demeanor, and made it very easy. He blazed that quiet trail, and the door swung wide open. Now, I got to throw this out, because I was a little white kid in Oklahoma City. It meant a lot to me to be able to go see the Harlem Globetrotters. Okay, they were more NBA than this NBA was to me, because they were breaking my color barrier for me. Because you remember Meadowlark Lemon. And then after him, Curly Neal. They were doing things that were so extraordinary to me that it just opened my eyes to, and they represented Harlem, which was really cool, because they're traveling the country. They're the coolest show on earth, man. There's nothing like it. So they are also quietly at this point in the early 50s, also breaking down some barriers quietly along with Mr. Lloyd in the early NBA.
Well, and I think we'll agree on this. Sports should break down barriers. Sports gives the balance of an equal playing field. True sports. True competition. This is what sports brings to the table. Doesn't see color, doesn't see religion. Just put the best players out there and let them compete. And they'll figure it out. That's what sports should be about.
Such an education. I love it when you guys educate the youngins. Hope they got it at home. West Virginia State, his alma mater, Earl Lloyd's alma mater, said this: when Earl stepped out on the court on that fateful date in 1950, this remarkable man rightfully earned his place in the historic civil rights movement, and more importantly, he opened the door to equality in America. Earl Lloyd, rest in peace. We'll have more First Take after the break.
ESPN First Take is presented by Chase Sapphire Preferred. Get 2 times points on travel and dining at restaurants. And in part by Burger King. Right now, get 10 delicious chicken nuggets for just $1.49, only at Burger King.
So once again, our friend Magic Johnson tweeted the show. The conversation on ESPN First Take about pressure on athletes, expectations, their mindset, and alcohol and drug addiction was very informative. Thank you, ESPN First Take, Carrie, Skip, and Coach Edwards for an outstanding show.
That Magic Johnson fella? Showtime?
He's a pretty good guy.
Tell you what. He's doing a good job, too.
He's doing a good job.
He should be the mayor of Los Angeles.
He should be.
He is the unofficial mayor of Los Angeles.
He owns Los Angeles.
He owns it, and he's the unofficial
And Irvin,
mayor.
I wish you'd been right here today. We could have had fun.
Oh, boy.
Thank you so much, Magic, for tweeting the show. Let's move on to the NFL, gentlemen. The Lions released Reggie Bush this week, freeing up an additional $1.7 million in cap space, on top of the projected $17 million they already had to spend on keeping free agent Ndamukong Suh, their draft class, and the others this offseason. If Detroit puts the franchise tag on Suh, he will earn under $27 million.
Wow.
Just that small amount, $27 million next season. So, Skip, how much money do you believe the Lions should commit to Suh?
None. Just a gut feeling. If I'm Detroit, and I know they're going to try to make him happy and keep him in Detroit, I just have a gut feeling it would be better served for both parties, Suh and the Lions, to start fresh elsewhere. And I believe in Ndamukong. This is just strictly my 2 cents from a distance. I just believe, because he's had issues with the city of Detroit occasionally and the fans and how he's been treated or mistreated, I think he will wind up elsewhere. He may go to New York, he may, whatever. Maybe it's the Jets, who knows. But if I'm Detroit, it hasn't ever quite clicked with him as a central figure in my program. So I'm going to take all that money and I'm going to go a different direction and see if I can go farther in the playoffs with a different feel to my team.
Well, there's going to be a choking point. There's no doubt about it. What can you what is he worth to you?
Yeah.
You know, what does he bring to your team? Is he a dynamic player? He's a dynamic player. Maybe the best defensive tackle in the league. But then there's always been some issues about him missing games. You know, or getting suspended. I should say missing games, getting suspended. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So that's a problem. Now, he brought that on himself, but they're going to do everything in their power to keep him. I hope he stays there. I really do. But I'm with you. I think if he's for the money, he might be somewhere.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Before we close out, can we give this man a round of applause?
Thank you
so much.
Oh, it's my
for hanging
pleasure.
out with us today.
Come on,
You were awesome.
Stephen A., I did the best I could, Stephen A.
We'll see you. Have a good one, everyone.